New Mexico Territory, 1873. The scorched earth of the Jornada del Muerto stretched before Quinn Nichols like the palm of a merciless god. At 25, he had already learned the most important lesson the frontier had to teach. Attachment was a liability. The dry wind whistled through the sparse vegetation surrounding his humble ranch, a scrappy patch of land he had purchased for nearly nothing because no one else wanted it. A man needs nothing but his horse, his rifle, and enough sense to keep both. Quinn muttered to himself as he mended a fence post, the rough wood splintering beneath his calloused hands. His lean frame cast a long shadow in the evening light, his once fine shirt now faded and patched from years of hard work. Quinn had come west after the war, hoping to escape the ghosts that haunted him. The son of a Virginia tobacco farmer, he had watched his family's land burn during the conflict, his parents perishing in the flames. He had wandered westward, eventually scraping together enough to buy this hardscrabble ranch on the edge of Apache territory. His neighbors, few and far between, considered him either brave or foolish. Perhaps he was both. Quinn kept his wheat-colored hair cropped short beneath his wide-brimmed hat, his clean-shaven face weathered beyond his years. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, rarely softened. The few ranchers and travelers who encountered him found him capable but distant, a man who helped when needed but never invited company. Connections get people killed out here, he would remind himself whenever loneliness crept into his thoughts on cold desert nights. Better to stand alone than to watch someone else fall. He had witnessed too much death already, first in war, then on the frontier, to believe otherwise. His modest herd of cattle provided just enough to keep him fed and his ranch operational. Quinn wanted nothing more than to be left alone with his animals and his thoughts, to carve out a quiet existence far from the complications of other people. He told himself it was enough. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between work and sleep, a different truth whispered to him. It spoke of emptiness, of a life half-lived, of hands that were strong for building but had nothing worth building. He silenced these thoughts with extra chores, with longer rides across his property, with exhaustion that left no room for yearning. The frontier did not tolerate weakness, and to Quinn, wanting more than survival was the greatest weakness of all. As twilight descended over the desert, Quinn spotted a plume of dust on the horizon. Riders approaching, fast. His hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip as he squinted against the dying sunlight. The frontier had taught him caution above all else. 3 horses galloped toward his ranch, 2 carrying riders who moved with the fluid grace that marked them as Apache. The 3rd horse bore no rider, but followed closely. Something was wrong. Quinn could feel it in his bones, in the urgent pace of their approach. Against his better judgment, he found himself walking toward them rather than retreating to the safety of his cabin. As they drew closer, he realized the riders were women, young women, their faces tight with fear. Behind them, far in the distance, another dust cloud grew. Pursuers. The first woman reined her horse to a stop before him, her dark eyes wide with urgency. "Help," she gasped, her English heavily accented. "Please." Quinn's instincts screamed at him to send them away. Other people's troubles were not his concern. The pursuers could be Apache warriors, U.S. cavalry, or outlaws. All spelled danger for a lone rancher who just wanted to be left alone. But something in the younger woman's face, terror mingled with desperate hope, made him hesitate. She couldn't have been more than 18, barely more than a girl. Blood stained the sleeve of her deerskin dress. "What happened?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "Bandits," the older one explained hurriedly. "They attack our hunting party. Kill our cousin. We escape, but they follow. Our horses tire." Quinn glanced at the growing dust cloud on the horizon. 6 riders, maybe more. Well armed, judging by the glint of metal catching the last rays of sunlight. His mind raced through his options, none of them good. "My sister is shot," the woman continued, gesturing to the younger one's arm. "We cannot ride much longer." Every lesson the frontier had taught him urged caution, detachment, self-preservation. But as Quinn looked at the wounded girl, something long dormant stirred within him. Perhaps it was the memory of his own sister, lost to fever years before the war. Perhaps it was simple human decency, not yet completely scoured away by the harsh desert winds. Whatever the reason, Quinn Nichols made a decision that would irrevocably alter the course of his carefully isolated life. "Get inside," he said, pointing to his cabin. "Take your horses to the back barn." Quickly, relief flooded their faces as they dismounted. The younger one stumbled, weak from blood loss, and Quinn caught her before she fell. For a moment, their eyes met, hers dark as midnight, filled with pain but also fierce determination. A warrior's eyes. As he helped them into his cabin, Quinn told himself this was a temporary problem. He would hide them, tend the girl's wound, and send them on their way once the danger passed. This change to his routine would be brief and forgettable. But as he looked at the blood on his hands, her blood, Quinn Nichols felt the first cracks forming in the walls he had built around himself. The belief that had sustained him, that isolation was the only path to survival on the frontier, suddenly seemed less certain than it had just hours before. Night had fallen completely by the time the bandits reached Quinn's ranch. He stood on his porch, rifle resting casually against his shoulder, as 6 rough-looking men rode into his yard. "Evening, gentlemen," Quinn said, his voice leveled despite the tension coursing through him. "Something I can help you with." Their leader, a scar-faced man with a filthy beard, scanned the property suspiciously. "Looking for 2 Apache women. Stole some horses from us. Tracked them this way." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "Apaches stealing horses from white men? Sounds like a tale told backward to me." The men shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. "Haven't seen any Indians today," Quinn continued. "Just me and my cattle out here. Mind if we have a look around?" the leader asked, though his tone made it clear it wasn't really a question. Quinn adjusted his stance slightly, bringing his rifle into a more ready position. "Actually, I do mind. This is private property, and I don't recall inviting you gentlemen for a visit." The atmosphere grew tense as the bandits exchanged glances. 6 against 1, rancher, the leader said quietly. "Bad odds." Quinn smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "For you, maybe. First man to draw gets a bullet. I might not get all of you, but I'll make sure I get him." He nodded toward the leader. "And you?" Long seconds ticked by as the men considered their options. Finally, the leader spat on the ground. "We'll be watching the trails. Those squaws show up, you'll regret getting in our business." Quinn watched them ride away, his heart pounding despite his outward calm. He had just made enemies he couldn't afford, for people he didn't know. It defied every rule he had lived by since coming west. Inside the cabin, he found the older sister tending to the younger one's wound. She had cleaned the blood away with water from his basin, revealing a deep graze along the upper arm. "Those men will be back," Quinn said as he set his rifle down. "Once they realize I lied." The older sister straightened. "I am Jade Joyner," she said, her English more fluent than he had first assumed. "This is my sister, Juniper. Our father was a trader who married into our mother's people." That explained their mixed features, the high cheekbones and dark eyes of their Apache heritage, combined with lighter skin and hair that fell in waves rather than straight. Jade appeared to be around 22, with intelligent eyes that assessed Quinn carefully. Her sister seemed younger, perhaps 19, her expression more guarded. "Quinn Nichols," he replied simply. "Your sister needs stitches." Jade nodded. "I can do it if you have needle and thread." As Quinn gathered supplies, Juniper spoke for the first time, her voice soft but determined. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "Most white men would have given us to those bandits." Quinn paused, considering her question. "I don't much like bullies," he said finally. "Don't much like seeing young women hunted, either, regardless of where they come from." "Our uncle is Chief Nate," Jade said as she threaded the needle. "Those men attacked our hunting party because they thought we would be easy prey. They did not expect us to fight back." Quinn felt a chill run down his spine. He had just hidden the nieces of a powerful Apache chief and threatened the men pursuing them. If the bandits didn't kill him, the complications of tribal politics might. "You're welcome to stay until morning," he said, retreating behind practicality. "Then I'll help you get back to your people." "The bandits will watch the trails," Juniper reminded him, wincing as her sister began stitching her wound. "I know ways they won't," Quinn replied. Ways he had planned to use himself if the territory ever became too dangerous or crowded. Escape routes he had mapped for a solitary traveler, never imagining he would use them to guide others. That night, Quinn slept on a bedroll near the fireplace, giving his bed to the sisters. He told himself it was simple hospitality, nothing more. But as sleep eluded him, he found his thoughts returning to Juniper's question. Why had he helped them? The answer he had given was true, but incomplete. Something about their vulnerability combined with their fierce determination had pierced the armor he had built around himself. For the first time in years, Quinn had acted on impulse rather than calculation, and the feeling was both terrifying and exhilarating. By dawn, he knew the most direct routes to Apache territory would be watched. The journey would take at least 3 days through difficult terrain. 3 days of proximity to people who had somehow, in the span of hours, made him question beliefs he had held for years. Quinn rose before sunrise and stepped outside to check on the horses. The desert air was cool, stars still visible in the fading night sky. As he rounded the corner of the barn, a sound made him freeze. Juniper stood a few yards away, her face turned toward the eastern horizon where the first hints of dawn painted the sky. Her lips moved in what appeared to be a prayer or song, though he could not make out the words. The wound on her arm was bandaged, her long dark hair loose around her shoulders. Quinn started to retreat, not wanting to intrude on a private moment, but she turned as if sensing his presence. "The dawn is sacred," she said simply. "It brings new chances." Something in her words resonated with him, though he would never have expressed such a sentiment himself. "We leave in an hour," he replied, uncertain how to respond to her openness. "Pack light. The trail will be difficult." Juniper nodded, studying him with those dark, perceptive eyes. "You are a man who has lost much," she observed. Quinn stiffened. "We all lose things out here." "Yes," she agreed. "But not all build walls so high." Before he could respond, she walked past him toward the cabin, leaving Quinn to wonder how this young woman he barely knew had seen through defenses that had kept everyone else at a distance for years. They departed as the sun cleared the horizon, Quinn leading with the sisters following on their horses. He had packed supplies for 4 days, hoping 3 would be sufficient but planning for delays. The bandits would be watching the main trails to Apache territory, so Quinn led them on a circuitous route through rocky ravines and dry creek beds where tracks would be difficult to follow. By midday, the heat was oppressive. They stopped in the shade of a rock formation to rest the horses and eat a small meal of jerky and hardtack. Quinn remained vigilant, scanning the horizon frequently for dust clouds or glints of metal that might indicate pursuers. "You know this land well," Jade commented as she shared water with her sister. Quinn nodded. "Been here 5 years. Learning the land means staying alive. Our people have known this land for generations," Juniper said. "Every rock, every plant has meaning and purpose." "Your people and mine see the land differently," Quinn acknowledged. "To most white settlers, it's something to be conquered and owned." "And to you?" Juniper asked. Quinn considered her question. "I don't aim to conquer it, just to understand it enough to survive it." "There is more to life than survival," Jade interjected with a slight smile. "Even on the frontier." Quinn repacked their supplies without responding. More than survival? Perhaps for some. But he had seen what happened to those who reached for more. They lost even what little they had. Better to keep expectations low and horizons narrow. Yet as they continued their journey, Quinn found himself noticing things he usually overlooked. The way sunlight filtered through the leaves of a mesquite tree, creating dappled patterns on the ground. The subtle variations in the songs of birds announcing their territories. The resilient beauty of wildflowers pushing through cracks in sun-baked earth. Was it the presence of companions that made him more observant? Or was it specifically these companions, with their different way of seeing the world? As dusk approached, they made camp in a sheltered arroyo. Quinn built a small, smokeless fire while Jade tended to her sister's wound. The stitches were holding, but Juniper moved with careful precision to avoid reopening the injury. "Tell me about your ranch," Juniper said as they sat around the fire eating a simple stew Quinn had prepared. Quinn shrugged. "Not much to tell. Small herd of cattle. Enough to get by." "You live there alone?" she pressed. "Just me," he confirmed. "Easier that way." Juniper exchanged a glance with her sister. "Our people believe no one is meant to walk alone forever. Solitude has its purpose, but it is not the natural state of humans." Quinn poked at the fire, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Different people, different beliefs." "What did you lose?" Jade asked gently. "That made you choose solitude?" The question hung in the air, direct and unavoidable. Quinn considered deflecting it, but found himself answering honestly instead. "Family, during the war. Then a friend, out here. learned that caring about people just gives death more targets. The sisters were silent for a moment, respecting his loss. Our mother died in a sickness that swept through our camp 2 winters ago, Juniper finally said. Many died, but those who survived did so by coming together, not by separating. Quinn looked up at her. Different circumstances. Perhaps, she acknowledged. Or perhaps different choices in similar circumstances. The conversation shifted to practicalities, the route for the next day, the need to conserve water, the likelihood of the bandits still searching for them. But Juniper's words lingered in Quinn's mind as he took the first watch while the sisters slept. Different choices in similar circumstances. The notion challenged everything Quinn had built his life around since coming west. He had chosen isolation as protection, convinced it was the only rational response to loss. What if he had been wrong all this time? The thought was too disquieting to entertain for long. Quinn focused instead on the sounds of the desert night, the familiar rhythm of nocturnal creatures going about their business. This, at least, made sense to him. The predictable patterns of nature, devoid of human complications. Yet when Jade relieved him for the second watch, and Quinn lay down to sleep, his dreams were not of solitude but of connection, of hands reaching for his, of voices calling him back from some great distance, of belonging to something larger than himself. He woke disoriented, the dream feelings fading quickly but leaving an unfamiliar longing in their wake. The second day of travel brought them deeper into rugged territory. The sisters proved to be capable riders, following Quinn's lead through difficult terrain without complaint. They passed through a narrow canyon where the temperature dropped noticeably, the high walls blocking the sun. There is a story about this place, Juniper said as they rode single file through the passage. Our people say 2 lovers from warring tribes would meet here in secret. When they were discovered, rather than be separated, they asked the earth to hide them forever. Quinn glanced back at her. And did it? Juniper smiled. The earth opened, and they descended into it together. Now their spirits guard this canyon. Those with good hearts may pass safely. Those with malice find only danger. Convenient story to keep enemies away, Quinn observed. All stories have purpose, Jade replied. Some teach, some warn, some preserve memory. The best stories do all 3. Quinn had never thought much about stories. The frontier was about practicalities, not tales. Yet he found himself wondering what stories might be told about him after he was gone. The solitary rancher who trusted no one? It seemed a poor legacy. As they emerged from the canyon into open country again, Quinn noticed storm clouds gathering in the distance. Weather could change quickly in the territory, deadly flash floods turning dry arroyos into raging rivers within minutes. We need shelter before that hits, he said, pointing to the approaching storm. There's a cave system about 2 miles ahead. We can wait it out there. They pushed the horses harder, reaching the caves just as the first heavy drops began to fall. Quinn helped the sisters unload the horses and secure them in a sheltered overhang before they retreated deeper into the main cave. The storm hit with sudden fury, sheets of rain obscuring the landscape outside. Thunder echoed through the cave, followed by brilliant flashes of lightning that temporarily illuminated the interior. Quinn built another small fire, and they huddled around it as the temperature dropped. This will delay us, Quinn said, calculating in his head. We may need a 4th day to reach your people. Our uncle will be searching for us, Jade assured him. He may have warriors out looking already. Quinn nodded, though the thought did little to reassure him. Apache warriors searching the territory were as likely to see him as an enemy as the bandits were. A white man traveling with 2 Apache women would raise questions at best, trigger violence at worst. As if reading his thoughts, Juniper said, We will explain that you helped us. Our uncle is fair. He judges men by their actions, not by their race. Been my experience that most people, red or white, judge first and ask questions later, Quinn replied. Then you have known the wrong people, Juniper said simply. The storm intensified, rain pounding against the earth outside. The noise made conversation difficult, so they sat in companionable silence, the fire casting flickering shadows on the cave walls. Quinn found himself studying Juniper when she wasn't looking, the graceful line of her profile, the quiet strength in her posture, the way her eyes reflected the firelight. She was beautiful in a way that transcended the conventional standards of either culture, a natural elegance that needed no enhancement. When she caught him watching her, Quinn quickly looked away. But not before he saw the slight smile that curved her lips, a gentle acknowledgement of his attention that contained neither mockery nor offense. "I will check on the horses," he said abruptly, rising to his feet. Outside, under the overhang, Quinn took deep breaths of the rain-washed air. What was happening to him? 3 days ago, his life had been orderly, predictable, safely isolated. Now he was guiding 2 Apache women through dangerous territory, running from bandits, and finding himself drawn to one of his companions in a way that defied his every rule. The horses nickered softly as he approached, seemingly content with their shelter. Quinn checked their tethers and patted their necks, grateful for the simple, uncomplicated interaction. Animals made sense to him. They wanted food, water, shelter, and occasional affection, all things he could provide without risking his heart. "They are calm despite the storm," Juniper said from behind him. Quinn turned, surprised he hadn't heard her approach. "They trust we'll keep them safe. Trust comes easily to them," she observed, moving to stroke her mount's muzzle. "They have not learned to fear connection." Quinn watched her gentle interaction with the animal. "Horses can be broken by harsh treatment," he said. "People too. Broken things can be mended," Juniper replied, her gaze shifting to him. "If they are given the chance." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken possibilities. Quinn felt simultaneously drawn to her and terrified by what she represented, the antithesis of every boundary he had established, every protection he had created. A particularly loud crash of thunder broke the moment. Juniper glanced toward the cave entrance. "My sister will wonder where we are." Quinn nodded, both relieved and disappointed by the interruption. "Storm's letting up. We should try to get some sleep. Long day tomorrow." They returned to find Jade already asleep near the fire. Quinn added more wood to the flames before settling on the opposite side, determined to maintain the physical distance that mirrored his emotional barriers. But as he drifted toward sleep, his last conscious thought was of Juniper's words. "Broken things can be mended." The statement carried both threat and promise. Threat to the careful isolation he had constructed, promise of something he had long ago resigned himself to never experiencing again. Morning brought clear skies and renewed urgency. They were now 2 days into Apache territory, and the likelihood of encountering either the bandits or Apache warriors increased with every mile. Quinn led them through a series of rocky outcroppings, taking a route that would be difficult to follow. "There is another way," Jade suggested around midday. "Through the valley beyond those hills. It would save us hours." Quinn shook his head. "Too exposed. The valley floor is visible for miles. But if our people are searching for us, they would see us more easily," Juniper pointed out. "And so would the bandits," Quinn countered. "Better to stay hidden and reach your camp safely than risk another confrontation." The sisters exchanged glances but deferred to his judgment. Quinn felt a twinge of something unfamiliar, not quite pride, but satisfaction that they trusted his knowledge of the terrain and threats. By late afternoon, they had made good progress despite the difficult route. Quinn estimated they would reach the main Apache encampment by the following evening if they continued at this pace. The thought brought conflicting emotions, relief that his responsibility would soon end, regret for the same reason. As they topped a ridge, Quinn reined his horse to an abrupt stop. Below them, in a small clearing, 3 riders were visible, white men, heavily armed, examining the ground. "Down," Quinn whispered urgently, dismounting and pulling his horse back from the skyline. The sisters followed suit immediately. "The bandits," Jade whispered. Quinn nodded. 3 of them, at least. Looking for tracks. He surveyed their position, mind racing through options. "We need to go around. There's another pass about 2 miles east." They led their horses carefully back down the ridge, keeping low to avoid being silhouetted against the sky. Once safely below the sight line, they remounted and rode east at a quick but quiet pace. "They are persistent," Juniper observed. "Men like that don't like being crossed," Quinn replied. "Especially not by a lone rancher and 2 women they were hunting. It's about pride now, not just whatever they originally wanted." The alternate pass was steeper and narrower than Quinn remembered, forcing them to dismount and lead the horses through the most treacherous sections. Loose rocks clattered down the slope despite their caution, each sound making Quinn wince. Almost through, he encouraged as they neared the top of the pass. A shot rang out, the bullet ricocheting off rock near Quinn's head. He ducked instinctively, pulling his rifle from its scabbard. "Go," he shouted to the sisters. Over the top and down the other side. 2 more shots followed in quick succession as Jade and Juniper urged their horses up the last stretch of the pass. Quinn returned fire, aiming at the flash of movement he had glimpsed below. A cry of pain told him at least 1 bullet had found its mark. But there were still at least 2 bandits, and they had the advantage of better cover. Quinn scrambled up the slope after the sisters, bullets kicking up dirt around him. As he reached the crest, something slammed into his side with the force of a charging bull. He stumbled, nearly losing his grip on his rifle. Looking down, he saw blood spreading across his shirt, his blood. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Quinn fired 2 more shots to cover his retreat before following the sisters down the other side of the pass. His horse had continued without him, following the others over the top. The world tilted and swayed as Quinn half ran, half stumbled down the slope. The bullet had caught him in the side, how deeply he couldn't tell. Each step sent fresh waves of pain through his body. "Quinn!" Juniper's voice seemed to come from very far away. She had ridden back for him, was now dismounting, reaching for him as he swayed on his feet. "Keep going," he managed to say. "They'll be coming over the top soon." "Not without you," she replied firmly, helping him onto her horse before mounting behind him. Her arms encircled his waist as she took the reins, steadying him as consciousness threatened to slip away. They rode hard, Jade leading Quinn's horse alongside her. The bouncing gait was agony for Quinn, but he bit back cries of pain, focusing instead on staying upright, on the warmth of Juniper at his back, on surviving 1 more minute, then another. Eventually, they reached a dense stand of trees near a small creek. Good cover, defensible, with water available. Jade dismounted quickly and helped her sister lower Quinn to the ground. His shirt was soaked with blood now, his face pale. "We need to stop the bleeding," Jade said urgently, tearing strips from her skirt to use as bandages. Quinn watched their efficiency through a haze of pain as they removed his shirt and examined the wound. The bullet had torn through his side, leaving an ugly furrow but apparently missing vital organs. "Fortunate," Jade pronounced. "It passed through clean." "Doesn't feel fortunate," Quinn gasped as they cleaned the wound with water from the creek. "You are alive," Juniper said, her eyes meeting his. "That is fortunate enough for now." As they worked to bandage him, Quinn realized with sudden clarity that his entire worldview had been upended in the space of 3 days. He had risked his life, was still risking it, for 2 people he barely knew. More shockingly, he didn't regret it. For the first time in years, Quinn felt something beyond the dull determination to survive another day. He felt purpose. "Why are you smiling?" Juniper asked as she tied off the bandage. "Just thinking," Quinn replied, "about how the world doesn't always make sense." Night fell as they made camp. Quinn insisted on taking watch despite his injury, propped against a tree with his rifle across his lap. The sisters knew better than to argue, though Juniper checked on him frequently, bringing him water and adjusting his position when pain made him shift uncomfortably. "You should rest," he told her during one such visit. "We'll need to move at first light." "I will rest when you do," she replied, settling beside him. After a moment of silence, she asked, "What will you do when you return to your ranch?" The question caught Quinn off guard. He had been so focused on their immediate survival that he hadn't thought beyond reaching the Apache camp. "Same as I always do, I suppose. Tend the cattle, mend fences, survive." Juniper's gaze was steady in the moonlight. "Is that enough?" Quinn looked away. "Has been so far. You risked your life for strangers," she observed. "That speaks of a heart that wants more than mere survival." Her words struck too close to the truth Quinn had been avoiding. He deflected, changing the subject. "What about you? What happens when you return to your people?" Juniper was quiet for a moment. "My uncle will want to hear of our adventure. There will be ceremonies to thank the spirits for our safe return." She paused. "And then life will continue as before. I will help with the children, gather plants for medicine, perhaps marry eventually." "Marry." The word escaped before Quinn could stop it. Juniper studied him, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "It is expected, though I have refused 2 suitors already. My uncle grows impatient with my choosiness." Relief washed through Quinn, followed immediately by confusion at his own reaction. What did it matter to him who she married? In a few days, they would part ways, likely never to meet again. You should find someone worthy of you, he said finally, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. And what would make a man worthy, in your estimation? She asked. Quinn considered the question. Someone who sees your strength and values it. Who listens when you speak of spirits in canyons and meaning in rocks. Someone who would risk everything to keep you safe. The words felt raw and honest in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. Juniper's hand found his in the darkness. Someone like you, perhaps? Quinn's heart hammered against his ribs. I'm just a rancher with a bullet hole in his side. You are more than you believe yourself to be, she said softly. Before Quinn could respond, Jade approached. I hear horses, she whispered urgently. Many of them. Quinn straightened, ignoring the pain that shot through his side. How far? Less than a mile. Coming this way. They quickly doused what remained of their small fire and gathered their belongings. Quinn struggled to his feet, leaning heavily against the tree for support. We need to move, he said, though the prospect of mounting a horse seemed nearly impossible in his current state. Wait, Juniper said, listening intently. The pattern of hoofbeats. It is not white men's riding. Quinn strained to hear what she detected so clearly. After a moment, he caught it too, a different rhythm to the approaching horses, a lightness that spoke of riders who moved with their mounts rather than against them. Apache, he asked, hope and fear mingling in equal measure. Juniper nodded. I believe it is our people. Within minutes, the riders appeared. A dozen Apache warriors led by an older man whose bearing marked him as someone of importance. They surrounded the small camp, weapons ready but not yet aimed. The leader dismounted and approached. Jade and Juniper stepped forward, speaking rapidly in their native language. Quinn understood none of the words, but the tone suggested explanation and relief. Several times, the sisters gestured toward him, and the leader's piercing gaze shifted to assess the wounded rancher. Finally, Juniper turned to Quinn. This is our uncle, Chief Nach. I have told him how you saved us from the bandits, hid us at your ranch, and guided us through dangerous territory at risk to your own life. Quinn straightened as much as his injury allowed, meeting the chief's evaluating stare. Your nieces are brave women, he said simply. I did what anyone with honor would do. Jade translated, though Quinn suspected the chief understood English better than he let on, a common tactical advantage among tribal leaders dealing with white authorities. The chief spoke at length, his expression inscrutable. When he finished, Juniper turned back to Quinn. My uncle says you have shown yourself to be a true warrior, not in your ability to kill, but in your willingness to protect those who needed protection. He offers you the hospitality of our camp until your wound has healed. Quinn hesitated. Entering an Apache camp voluntarily was not something many white men would consider wise. Yet the alternative was attempting to return to his ranch alone, wounded, with bandits still searching the territory. More than that, the thought of parting from Juniper so soon twisted something inside him that he could no longer ignore. I accept his generous offer, Quinn replied, inclining his head toward the chief. Two warriors helped Quinn onto his horse, positioning themselves on either side to ensure he wouldn't fall during the journey. As they prepared to depart, Juniper rode close beside him. You are concerned about entering our camp, she observed. Quinn managed to smile despite his pain. Let's just say it wasn't in my plans for the week. The best journeys rarely follow our plans, she replied. They follow our hearts instead. As they rode through the night toward the Apache encampment, Quinn Nichols realized that the walls he had built around himself were crumbling beyond repair. The belief that had guided him for years, that connection led only to pain and loss, had been challenged not just by words but by experience. He had connected with these sisters, especially Juniper, and while it had indeed led to physical pain, it had also awakened something in him that felt remarkably like hope. The Apache camp was larger than Quinn had expected, dozens of wickiups arranged in a pattern that spoke of both practicality and tradition. As they rode in, curious faces emerged to watch the procession. Many eyes lingered on Quinn. A wounded white man in the company of their chief was clearly an unusual sight. He was helped into a wickiup that appeared to serve as a healing lodge. An elderly woman, the tribe's medicine woman, he guessed, examined his wound with gentle but knowing fingers. She spoke to Juniper, who translated. She says the bullet path is clean, but infection is beginning. She will use herbs to draw it out. It will be painful." Quinn nodded, too exhausted to feel apprehension. "Tell her I am grateful for her help." What followed was indeed painful. A poultice of pungent herbs packed into the wound, followed by a bitter tea that made the edges of his vision blur. Through it all, Juniper remained by his side, her hand sometimes finding his when the pain grew most intense. Days passed in a haze of fever and healing. Quinn drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes aware of the medicine woman changing his bandages, sometimes of Juniper sitting quietly beside him, singing softly in her native tongue. Once, he thought he heard her speaking with her uncle just outside the wickiup, their voices low but intense. Another time, he was certain he felt her lips press briefly against his forehead. When the fever finally broke, Quinn woke to find Juniper asleep in a sitting position near the entrance to the wickiup, her head tilted at an angle that would surely cause her neck to ache when she woke. He studied her in the dim light, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the way her hair fell across her shoulder, the strength and vulnerability both evident in her repose. As if sensing his gaze, she stirred and opened her eyes. Seeing him awake and alert, she moved quickly to his side. "The fever has broken," she said, touching his forehead with cool fingers. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a buffalo," Quinn admitted. "But alive." Relief softened her features. The medicine woman was concerned. The infection was strong. "How long have I been here?" he asked, realizing he had lost track of time completely. 6 days, Juniper replied. "The bandits were captured by our warriors 3 days ago. They will not trouble anyone again." Quinn absorbed this information. 6 days. His ranch had been unattended for over a week now. His cattle would have scattered without his daily attention. Yet strangely, the thought didn't distress him as much as it once would have. "Your uncle," he said, remembering fragments of conversations overheard during his fever. "He has been patient with my presence here." Juniper's expression grew more reserved. "There has been much discussion about you." Something in her tone alerted him. "What kind of discussion?" She hesitated. "Among our people, when a man risks his life for a woman as you did for me and my sister, it is seen as a declaration of intent." Quinn blinked, trying to process her meaning through the lingering fog of fever. Intent. A warrior who proves his valor in such a way is making a claim, showing he is worthy of consideration as a husband. The word hung in the air between them. Quinn struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing wound. "I didn't know," he said finally. "In my culture, helping someone in danger doesn't necessarily imply that." "I explained this to my uncle," Juniper assured him. "But he sees how you look at me, and how I look at you." She met his gaze steadily. "He believes there is truth beyond what either of us has said aloud." Quinn felt exposed, as if the chief had somehow seen through all his carefully constructed defenses to the feelings he had barely acknowledged to himself. "What does he intend to do with this belief?" Quinn asked cautiously. "That depends on you," Juniper replied. "When you are well enough to travel, you may return to your ranch with our gratitude and protection. Or, Quinn prompted when she fell silent. "Or you may consider another path." The implication was clear, though she left it unstated. Quinn's mind raced with possibilities he had never allowed himself to contemplate. "I need time to think," he said finally. Juniper nodded and rose gracefully. "Rest now. There will be time for decisions when your strength returns." As she left the wickiup, Quinn stared at the woven ceiling, thoughts tumbling through his mind. The frontier had taught him that attachment led to loss. Yet his attachment to Juniper had led him here, to an Apache camp where he had been healed and protected. The contradiction challenged everything he had built his life around. Over the next few days, as Quinn's strength gradually returned, he observed the life of the camp from the entrance of his wickiup. He watched children playing, women working together at daily tasks, men returning from hunting parties to be greeted with evident affection. There was hardship here, certainly. The frontier was unforgiving to all who lived upon it. But there was also connection, community, purpose beyond mere survival. Jade visited him occasionally, bringing food and news from beyond the camp. She mentioned that warriors had checked on his ranch, finding the cattle scattered but still on his land, the cabin untouched. "They brought some of your things," she said one afternoon, presenting him with a small bundle that contained a clean shirt, his mother's pocket watch, and the book of poetry he kept hidden under his bed, items he would have selected himself if given the choice. Your warriors have sharp eyes, he commented, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Jade smiled. Sharp eyes, yes. But the items were chosen by Juniper. She said these would matter most to you. The knowledge that Juniper had understood him well enough to select these particular possessions affected Quinn deeply. Few people in his life had ever taken the time to see beyond his carefully maintained exterior. Chief Nate visited as well, speaking through Jade as translator. He questioned Quinn about his life before the territory, his experiences during the war, his reasons for choosing isolation. The chief listened more than he spoke, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. At the end of their conversation, he made a statement that Jade translated with evident surprise. My niece believes your heart is worthy of her, despite the walls you have built around it. I am not yet convinced, but I see the possibility of a warrior spirit beneath your white man's caution. After the chief departed, Quinn asked Jade, what did he mean by that? Jade hesitated. My uncle rarely accepts white men into our extended family. There have been too many broken promises, too much betrayal. But he sees how Juniper feels, and he respects what you did for us. And how does Juniper feel? Quinn asked before he could stop himself. Jade gave him a knowing look. That is for her to tell you, not me. That evening, as Quinn sat outside watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple, Juniper joined him. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes before she spoke. Tomorrow you will be strong enough to ride, she said. The medicine woman says your wound is healing well. Quinn nodded, his heart suddenly heavy with the implication. Tomorrow he would leave this place, return to his ranch, to his solitary existence. The thought brought none of the relief he would have expected a week ago. Your ranch will need attention after being unattended for so long, Juniper continued. But you will not need to face that work alone. Quinn turned to look at her, uncertain of her meaning. My uncle has made a decision, she explained. He offers an alliance between our people and you. For young men from our tribe will help you rebuild and expand your ranch. In return, you will provide beef for our people and a place of safety if it is ever needed. The offer was unexpected and generous, practical assistance when he needed it most, and a mutually beneficial arrangement for the future. Yet Quinn sensed there was more. And what does your uncle expect in return for this alliance? He asked carefully. Juniper met his gaze directly. He expects you to decide whether you want more than survival from your life. Whether you are brave enough to tear down the walls you have built and let someone in. She paused. Whether you could love a woman who walks between two worlds. The directness of her statement took his breath away. In that moment, looking into her eyes, Quinn realized the choice before him wasn't really a choice at all. The path he had been following, isolation as protection, had already been abandoned the moment he decided to help two Apache sisters fleeing from bandits. I've spent 5 years convincing myself that being alone was safer, he said slowly. That caring for others only led to pain. But these past days have shown me there's a different kind of safety in connection, a different kind of strength in belonging. Quinn reached for her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. I don't know if I remember how to love properly, but I want to learn again. With you, if you'll have me. Juniper's smile was like the desert sunrise, gradual, then brilliant. My people have a saying, the heart remembers what the mind forgets. Your heart remembers, Quinn Nichols. I have seen it in your actions, even when your words said otherwise. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently against his in an intimate gesture that felt more significant than a kiss might have been. My answer is yes. I will have you, walls and all, and help you dismantle them stone by stone until your heart is free again. The following day, Quinn rode from the Apache camp not toward his ranch alone, but with Juniper and 4 strong young men from the tribe. Chief Nate had given his blessing to their union, with the condition that Quinn prove himself worthy through actions rather than words in the year to come. A man is known by what he builds, the chief had told him through Jade's translation. Build something worthy of my niece's heart. As they crested the final ridge overlooking Quinn's ranch, he surveyed his land with new eyes. What had once seemed merely a place of refuge now appeared as a place of possibility. The cabin could be expanded, the herd increased. There was good water, fertile soil in the valley beyond. Room enough for a family to grow. Juniper rode up beside him, following his gaze across the property. What do you see? she asked. Quinn smiled, reaching across to take her hand. The future, he replied. Our future. 1 year later, the ranch was transformed. With the help of Juniper's kinsman, Quinn had expanded the cabin into a proper house, built a new barn, and nearly doubled his herd. The alliance with the Apache had benefited both sides. The tribe received regular supplies of beef, while Quinn gained not only workers but friends who taught him sustainable ways to use the land. On a clear autumn day, with the desert in bloom after rare seasonal rains, Quinn and Juniper were married in a ceremony that honored both their traditions. Chief Nate presided, publicly acknowledging Quinn as a true ally and welcoming him into the extended family of the tribe. After the celebration, as the newly wedded couple stood on the porch of their home watching the sunset, Quinn wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked, still sometimes amazed that such a simple word could apply to his life again. Juniper leaned back against him, covering his hands with her own. "Complete," she corrected. "And you?" Quinn considered the question, remembering the man he had been just over a year ago, isolated, convinced that connection led only to loss, determined to survive, but not truly live. The transformation seemed impossible, yet here he stood, surrounded by evidence of his changed reality. "I spent years believing the frontier taught only harsh lessons," he said, "that it demanded isolation as the price of survival." He turned Juniper to face him, cupping her cheek gently. "You showed me its true lesson, that we survive best together, that connection isn't weakness but strength." Juniper smiled up at him. "And what about love? What has the frontier taught you about that?" Quinn leaned down to kiss her softly. "That it grows even in the harshest places," he replied. "That it's worth every risk. And that sometimes, a man who believes himself beyond redemption can find his way home in the eyes of a woman brave enough to see past his walls." As the last light faded from the sky, they remained on the porch, two people from different worlds who had found in each other not just love, but a new understanding of what it meant to truly live on the frontier, not merely to survive its hardships, but to thrive through connection, to build something lasting in a land that demanded courage from all who sought to make it home. The ranch that had once stood as a monument to isolation now served as a bridge between cultures, a place where a former solitary rancher and an Apache healer forged a life that honored both their pasts while creating a shared future, proving that even in the unforgiving landscape of the American frontier, love could take root, grow strong, and transform everything it touched.